Well, who's been naughty? Not just David Cameron. The Guardian have been naughty too. This is a cup of wine. Yeah. You can say many things about David Cameron. The fact that he was arrogant with his constant power plays that he was making. And he was on a good run. A lot of them paid off. You know, he successfully divided up all the opposition, so they managed to cling on to power. There was a Scottish referendum. You know, he was having a good run. And then he did Brexit. Regardless of what you think of Brexit, whether you're in or out, the fact is, he was in. He was a guy that wanted to stay in Europe. Made a power play, and it blew up in his face, and then he slunked away. And we haven't heard from him for a long time. And suddenly, with Brexit actually coming up, finally, you know, because it has gotten real boring either way, and suddenly Dave's all over the place. It's like the mystery man has returned. It's like, oh, remember David Cameron? He's back. But of course, the Guardian went a bit too far. Comments about David Cameron when they brought up his seed, his deceased seed, which is not a cool thing to do unless you think you're like mad gangsterish. You know, that's probably the sort of thing you can not get away with, but the sort of things you would say because you are a mad gangster. But you're not. You write for the Guardian, so therefore you're not mad gangsterish, are you? Really, you're just a whining hater. You know, like. There's a huge trend these days of these activist types and journalists saying just egregious things, saying, you know, I'm glad they're dead. Or, yeah, you got what you deserved. Yeah, 9/11 was good. You know, just to be like an insensitive teenager who's trying to cause a reaction. You know, like, you're supposed to be grown-ups, okay? We have a sickness in society of a lack of grown-up actions. There's just not enough grown-ups anymore. I don't know where they all went and what happened to them. But when it gets to a stage where someone like me, at my age, who is not married and does not have children, seems to be an actual grown-up now and does more grown-up things than other people, it's worrying because I also do this. It's not exactly a you know, what grown-ups do, is it? But here I am. I didn't ask for this position to be a chief official grown-up. Not saying I'm the chief grown-up, but as an official grown-up now, I have to. Well, I just have to take on the responsibility, don't I? So what did they say? What happened, man? The Guardian has apologised for saying David Cameron had only felt privileged pain over the death of his son. What an astonishing thing to say. Privileged pain. All pain is the same in certain ways. The pain of loss is, you know, you can have more loss. You know, you could be extremely poor living in a third world country and, you know, lose 4 of your 5 kids. Hell, you could be Shamima Begum, who lost 3 children now? 3, yeah. That's pain. That is pain. But losing a child, something I have not had the misfortune of having experienced, is still pain, isn't it? It's still pain. So saying something like that to get all your little NPC nodding dogs going, yeah, that's right. Tell him, comrade, is just, it's whack, man. It's quite whack. In extracts from his memoirs published on Sunday, the former PM praises the NHS care his disabled son, Ivan, received before he died in 2009, aged 6. But the paper asked whether he might have understood the damage his policies have done if he had sought care for a parent rather than a child. The Guardian removed the remarks within hours of publication. The original version of an editorial posted online yesterday fell far short of our standards, a spokesman said. I mean, does it really? What are your standards these days? Limited. It was changed significantly within 2 hours, and we apologise completely. That's good of you. A screenshot of the paragraph about Mr. Cameron's son was shared on social media, including by Chancellor Sajid Javid, who called it a shameful thing to read. Never has an editorial so lacked in empathy while so righteously criticizing others for lacking it, he said in a tweet. Right. What does it say? Mr. Cameron's known pain and failure in his life, but it has always been limited failure and privileged pain. The miseries of boarding school at 7 are entirely real, and for some people emotionally crippling, but they come with an assurance that only important people can suffer that way. Even his experience of the NHS, which looked after his severely disabled son, has been that of a better functioning and better funded parts of the system. Had he been forced to wrestle with the understaffed and over-managed hospitals of much of England, or had he been trying to get the system to look after a dying parent rather than a dying really? Right, I mean, privileged. I mean, the fact they say, oh, it's privileged pain. What he went through was privileged pain. His son died, though, didn't he? So, where did all that, the privilege of the well-funded parts of the NHS, what good did that do him, really? Comedian and actress Jenny Eclair. Is Jenny Eclair an actress? Has she ever acted in anything? I can't think. I am furious with David Cameron, but to question his grief privilege, as The Guardian is doing, is beyond vile. His 6-year-old son died. It's pretty fair, isn't it? Pretty fair point to make. Mr. Cameron had been an MP for less than a year when Ivan was born in 2002 and became Prime Minister the year after his son died. In an extract from his memoirs published in the Sunday Times, Mr. Cameron recalls taking Ivan to the hospital when he was just a few days old. When you watch your tiny baby undergoing multiple blood tests, your heart aches. When they bend him back into the fetal position to remove fluid from the base of his spine with a long, threatening-looking needle, it almost breaks, he says. It was later discovered Ivan had cerebral palsy and a severe form of epilepsy that led him to have 20 to 30 seizures a day. That's a lot. Mr. Cameron also pays tribute to his memoirs to the extraordinary compassion in our health service and the best of the NHS who helped look after his son. Reflecting on his experience, helping care for Ivan, the former Tory leader says, a world in which things had always gone right for me suddenly gave me an immense shock and challenge. Nothing, absolutely nothing, can prepare you for the reality of losing your darling boy in this way. It was as if the world stopped turning. Mr. Cameron's wife told The Times in 2017 her son's death overshadowed everything and rendered the outside world meaningless. Like anyone else in my situation, I just kept going. You have to deal with it because you have no choice. She also said it changed her husband's politics, saying it made him understanding that we couldn't be too subjective. Wow. There you go. But it is this whole rhetoric of it being fair game to say whatever you like about people just because they maybe had been birthed with better opportunities than you are doesn't necessarily mean that they aren't going to experience the same horrors and hardships throughout life, because you got to remember, life is crazy. I mean, life is proper crazy. Mad shit happens all the time and can happen to anyone, good and bad. It just happens. It just, the variables of things going wrong and things going right are immense. There are so many variables. It's when you start to think about them and worry about them, that's when you kind of lose your mind and go, oh my God! Because it's like, oh, shit, walking out the front door is bad enough. Oh, I don't think I should do that. Things can, mean and horrible things can happen to anybody. And to sort of go off on one about, even his experience of the NHS, which looked after his severely disabled son, has been that of a better functioning and better funded part of the system. It's like, what? Had he been forced to wrestle with the understaffed and overmanaged hospitals of much of England, or had he tried, assist him like a dying parent rather than a dying child? It's like, what? Yeah. Oh, you were lucky. It's saying you were privileged. Then it was your child that died or was dying, and not your parent that was dying. That's quite a thing to say. Incredibly insulting, and yeah, it is disgusting at the end of the day. You know, I mean, you have the right to say whatever you want, but you know, there's too much of it. There's too much of it. Some people call it reverse snobbery. You know, reverse snobbery. It's a good term. Not like reverse racism, which is just silly. Reverse snobbery. You know, when you look down your nose at people that are just a bit better off than you, from the word go. People remember, at some point, someone worked very hard. You know, maybe did a lot of dirt, but still put the work in to ensure that their children wouldn't have to suffer as much. But again, you can have all the money in the world, you can have all the connections, still doesn't necessarily mean you're going to save your dying child. So, just remember that before you say anything outrageous or want to say anything outrageous. You know, give it a bit of thought. You know, no one knows what the next person is actually going through, so therefore you should not always judge them. Okay? But of course, what David Cameron did playing his little power games was, not a good thing. So if you're going to criticize him on that. Don't bring dead kids into it, please. Goodness sake.